Jeff Bezos just blocked the Washington Post from endorsing Kamala Harris, and the traditional media machine is up in arms.
The Washington Post announced that it would not be endorsing a candidate for president in the 2024 election.
It was the Washington Post owner, Jeff Bezos, one of the richest men in the world, who ultimately spiked it.
He got Bezos to back down, head of Amazon. He forced them to not endorse. That's pretty scary, guys.
And worse for Jeff Bezos' Washington Post, the newspaper is now shedding more than 200,000 subscribers and had a third of its editorial board resign in protest. In fact, things got so bad, Jeff himself had to write an op-ed in the Post this week explaining why he made the decision to break from decades of precedent to endorse a candidate for president. It's a pretty interesting thesis, but one I think Jeff ultimately gets wrong, which is pretty important because it's exactly why we started Coinage as the only community-owned outlet controlled by you instead of a billionaire.
Coinage NFTs on sale now.
So let's start with what Jeff Bezos is right about. Mainly the fact that nobody trusts the mainstream media. In fact, as we've covered before in our launch video, Gallup data shows that trust in media is at an all-time low. And as Bezos writes, what presidential endorsements actually do is create a perception of bias, a perception of non-independence. He also acknowledges that his decision to block a Harris endorsement so close to the election might be a bad look, saying, quote, "I wish we had made the change earlier than we did. That was inadequate planning and not some intentional strategy." But the Post's editor-at-large, who resigned in protest, went on CNN to say it actually was exactly that.
They have to say something. What are they going to say? We are in fact bending the knee to Donald Trump because we're afraid of what he'll do. They're not going to say that. Obviously, they're going to say this. But look, the editorial page, not just the Washington Post as a news organization, but the editorial page has been laying out for almost 8 years arguments as to why Donald Trump is not only the wrong candidate, but an actual threat to American democracy. The editorial page has been doing this. So, for them to decide that this is the election that they're going to sit out when they have made it very clear, the editorial page, that Trump represents a threat to democracy. Yeah. Look, there's no explanation other than the most obvious one. This is a simple question with a simple answer.
So you might say, okay, Zach, then what are you arguing? That he should have just endorsed Kamala or Trump or Chase Oliver? And I would say no to those first two, and who is that to that last one? Because it doesn't have to be that way. Bezos is right to ask the question. Maybe a news outlet doesn't need to endorse a candidate for president. That doesn't seem to be working out anyways if trust is at an all-time low. But he might be even more wrong to answer that question himself, as in single-handedly shutting down the Post's editorial decision-making. If anything, that's led to more accusations of bias. Instead, what we did at Coinage was pose the same question, but rather than have our billionaire owner answer it, we had our owner members vote. Anyone with a Coinage NFT could vote on our call on who to endorse, and the decision was to not endorse anyone either. So, kind of the same result, but a very different defense against any perceptions of bias. As in, it wasn't my call, it was our community's call. And surprisingly, a pretty robust call at that, thanks to Jeff, Ralph, and Meta David, who debated all this. So look, Coinage might not be the Washington Post, and I'm certainly not Jeff Bezos. Or am I? This was Coinage. Stay safe out there.